Growing up as a kid, yeah. All a nigga wanna have was a Burberry scarf and $3 in my pocket. Instead I got beat with a switch, but I don't give a fuck, but it's on my body. Scars all up on me, but I run around from.
What is up, everybody? It's JT Sportsman at you guys with another video. In this video, I'm here with my LA Rams 2020 wide receiver preview. Going to be going through and giving my analysis and my preview of the Rams' current wide receivers on the roster. Make sure that you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel because I upload NFL videos and college football videos daily. So, when you look at this Rams receiving group, they lost Brandon Cooks. Now, Brandon Cooks missed a lot of time last year due to injuries. I think he had like an ankle injury. Then he also was battling concussion issues. So they ended up trading him away to Houston. Now, despite him being traded away, I don't really think it's going to be all that big of a loss because they had a lot of guys that were really able to step up last year. So, without a doubt, we already know that Cooper Kupp is the best wide receiver on the roster. He had a breakout year last year, 1,161 receiving yards, 10 touchdowns, 94 receptions on 134 targets. He, without a doubt, is becoming one of the more underrated wide receivers in the NFL. And with Brandon Cooks gone, it's going to be really interesting to see how Cooper Kupp's role ends up going into this year because this is a guy who can play outside receiver. He can also play slot receiver as well. So I think we could end up seeing Cooper Kupp having an even better season compared to what he had last year, which is absurd. But I think Cooper Kupp could be in for a season where maybe he probably hits that 1,200 yard mark. He probably has about the same amount of touchdowns, and he'll probably have like over 100 receptions. So I expect Cooper Kupp to have a large workload. Don't be surprised you see Cooper Kupp end up becoming a Pro Bowler by the end of this season. So he's the best wide receiver on the Rams roster. The second best wide receiver on the roster, who I think should be number 2 in the depth chart without a doubt, is Robby Woods. Now, Robby Woods also had a really good season last year as well. He had 1,134 receiving yards. He had 2 touchdowns. Wasn't able to find the end zone all that much, but he also had 90 receptions, and he was targeted 139 times. So, without a doubt, we've seen Cooper Kupp and Robby Woods get a big workload over the course of last year, and it's really interesting because Robby Woods was a guy who a lot of people just looked at as just a great deep threat, but last year he proved that he can be more than that, and over the last few years, he has been a wide receiver that has improved more than any other wide receiver in the NFL. Like I said, this guy came into the NFL as mostly just a big play guy, a guy who you can just get the ball in his hands so he can make some things happen, and a guy you just throw the ball up to on, you know, those fly and post routes and things like that. He was a good deep threat, but he is a wide receiver that has totally revamped his game. He can do everything now. He's not just a one-trick pony anymore. He can run most of the routes on the route tree that you need him to run. He can move the chains on third downs. So Robby Woods is starting to become a really good all-around receiver. Now, you could argue, some people may argue and say that you could make the argument that Robby Woods and Cooper Kupp are number 1 wide receivers, 1A and 1B. So basically, it's pretty much pick your poison who you think is the better wide receiver. I would like to say Cooper Kupp, but I also seen a lot of Rams fans say that Robby Woods is the best wide receiver, and I'm not going to get mad at anybody if they make that argument. I just think Cooper Kupp is a little bit better. But overall, I wouldn't be mad if any Rams fan was to say that Robby Woods was the best receiver on the roster. But just for the fact that Cooper Kupp was able to find the end zone a lot more than what Robby Woods was is the reason why I'm going to say that he's better. But I mean, I don't think Robby Woods is that far off because this is a wide receiver that has improved every year. Now, will he have the season that he had last year? That's debatable. I think he'll probably still have a pretty solid season. I think he should, without a doubt, find the end zone a lot more compared to what he did last year. Now we got the third best receiver on the roster, Josh Reynolds. Now, I think a big reason why the Rams were so comfortable in letting Brandon Cooks walk is because they knew who they had stepping up. So basically, they knew Cooper Kupp was become their number 1 option. Robby Woods was going to come to number 2, but a lot of people's question was who was going to become the number 3 wide receiver, and that answer was Josh Reynolds. Now, Josh Reynolds is a guy that over the last few years, he's proved that he can be more than solid of being a very capable number 3 wide receiver, and he proved that for the last few seasons. And that's a big reason why the Rams felt so comfortable in trading away Brandon Cooks. Now, Josh Reynolds last year had 326 receiving yards. He only caught 1 touchdown pass. He had 21 receptions and only targeted 43 times. I mean, this is a guy who, without a doubt, is going to have a bigger workload. He's going to have more targets. And this is a guy who, although he didn't touch the field last year, this is a guy who has proved more than on a few occasions that he's more than capable of stepping in and being a really good contributor at that number 3 wide receiver spot. So the 3 best receivers on the roster, you got Cooper Kupp, you got Robby Woods, you got Josh Reynolds. Now you got a couple of other guys. You got Nsimba Webster. I hope I pronounce his name right. Now, I'm not expecting a lot out of him, to be honest. I think he's just a returner and a special teams guy. So I'm not really expecting a lot out of him. Then you got Greg Dortch. Now, Greg Dortch is an interesting story, right? Now, this is a guy who was on the practice squad last year for several different teams. He started the season out on the Jets practice squad. He was on the Panthers practice squad. Then at the near end of the season, around, I think it was like December, maybe late November, the Rams picked him up on their practice squad. Now, will he make their roster? I don't really know. I don't really think he makes the roster. If he does make the roster, it'll probably be because of his ability to contribute on special teams. But, I mean, this is a guy who bounced around a lot. So, I mean, if you're able to make the practice squad for several different NFL teams, that means you're able to do something right. So, it's really interesting to see. Then you got Van Jefferson. Now, Van Jefferson was drafted in round 2 of the 2020 NFL draft that just went away. And Van Jefferson was really interesting during his time for Florida, right? Because this is a guy that is long and like he's like 6'1", 200 something pounds. I can't really think of his weight right now, but he is a really long, lanky wide receiver. Now, I don't know if the Rams are going to use him more as a red zone target because although he is 6'1", he has very long arms. He has a pretty good wingspan, a really good catch radius. So I don't know if they're going to use him more as a red zone threat or if they're going to use him more as a deep threat. Now, if I had a doubt, he's going to be the Rams' number 4 wide receiver because everybody else other than that comes after him isn't really all that great. So Van Jefferson is a guy that can make some things happen after the catch. He's not a guy that's going to make a lot of things happen, but he's a guy who can make a few guys miss once he gets his hands on the ball. But I don't really know how the Rams are going to use him, and that's going to be a really interesting question to monitor as we progress throughout the 2020 NFL season. Like, he's going to be like a vertical threat, more like a deep target, or are the Rams really going to try to utilize him more inside the red zone of how long and lanky he is? So that's going to be really interesting to monitor. But I think without a doubt, he is their 4th best wide receiver going into this season. I think he's going to end up being number 4 on the depth chart. He should have a pretty solid rookie year. I think a lot of people are really sleeping on Van Jefferson. I know a lot of people are all caught up on all the other young rookie wide receivers like Jerry Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb, and KJ Hamler, Justin Jefferson, and all those other guys, Jalen Reagor. But I think a lot of people are sleeping on Van Jefferson. I think Van Jefferson is in a really good system that fits what he's able to do the most, depending on how the Rams use him. I really hope the Rams don't use him as a red zone like option. I hope they really try to get him involved in a deep vertical threat passing game, because you know the Rams like to use play action to set up the passing game. So I really think that Van Jefferson could have a really good rookie season. I think a lot of people are really sleeping on Van Jefferson. This was a guy who had a really nice career during the University of Florida. Then you got Ernest Edwards. Now, Ernest Edwards is another rookie. Now, he comes from the University of Maine. Now, when he played for Maine, he was really good. Now, the only reason why he probably didn't get on a lot of teams' radars, I think this is a guy who had a pretty high draftable grade. Like, I had like a 6th round, 5th round grade on him. And he runs pretty good routes. He has pretty decent hands, but it still remains to be seen if he will make the roster. I think he has an above average chance of making. I think his chances of making the roster is between 70 and 60, somewhere in between that range, because I think he has some talent. It's just a question of if he's going to be able to put it all together. And if he does make the roster, it may be because of special teams, but don't sleep on Ernest Edwards. I think this is a guy who has a lot of talent. I think without a doubt he does have the potential of making this roster. Then you have a bunch of other guys as well. You got J.J. Kolsky, you got Tristan Jackson, you got a lot of other guys. You got Esco Wilson. So, I mean, they got a lot of young wide receivers on the roster, but overall, I think the depth chart is going to be, without a doubt, Cooper Kupp is going to be the number 1. Robby Woods is going to be your number 2. Josh Reynolds is going to be your number 3. Van Jefferson is going to be your 4th-string wide receiver. Then I would like to say that Ernest Edwards probably ends up being that 5th wide receiver. Then I think you have to go with Nsimba Webster probably as your 6th wide receiver. So I think the Rams will probably go with those guys. Then maybe if they want to bring in a 7th guy, maybe But overall, that's how I think the Rams wide receiving core ends up playing. Now, the other guys, I don't think they'll end up making the roster, or they end up just making the practice squad. So that's it for my LA Rams 2020 wide receiver preview. Let me know what you guys think about the LA Rams wide receiving core going into the season. Let me know your depth chart down in the comment section down below. Let me know who you guys think makes the roster, who's going to be your sleeper. So make sure that you guys like the video and subscribe. Make sure you guys follow me on all my social media platforms down in the description in the comment section down below. And thanks for watching.